Hello and welcome to this video tutorial from cgcookie.com. My name is Jonathan Williamson, and today we're going to be looking at how to model a light bulb within Blender. Some of the tools that we'll be using will be obviously extrusion, grabbing, rotating, just general translate tools, but also the primary thing that we're going to be looking at is how to model threads using the screw tool. This is a great feature within Blender that's been around for a while, but tends to mystify a lot of newer users. Now, like I said, we're just going to be modeling the light bulb today, but shortly after this we will follow it up with another tutorial that'll look at how to add the materials for the glass, the metal, etc., and then how to render it with a nice polished render. So let's get to modeling. We're going to start out by modeling the screw portion, or the part that screws into the fixture. And to do this, you'll notice that I do have my view split into two. I've got my left view as my front, and my side view. And so from the front view, let's switch it to top via 7 on the number pad, hit spacebar, add mesh circle. And we're just going to use 12 vertices. Those will give us a nice number, give us plenty to work with. So let's just hit OK, and then just hit tab to go into edit mode and zoom right in so we can see it. Now we're going to go back to front view so that we can extrude it, and we're just going to get this fairly close. We're not modeling this absolutely exact, but it'll be close enough. And so let's just hit E to extrude only edges, immediately hit Z such that it locks to the Z axis, and then hold down Control and go down about 1 full Blender unit, or maybe even 1.5. There we are, something in there. And then we're going to go ahead, we're just getting the basic shape first, so this is the straight part of the threads, like you can see here. And then we're going to go ahead and extrude, hold down Control, move down to the other half, and then let's scale it in about halfway as well, or maybe one more. So this would be where the black part that you can't see, the connector, is right there. Maybe scale it out one more, and then we'll hit E to extrude, take it down, say 2, scale it in 1 or 2 more, then extrude one more time, scale it, or bring it down, and then scale in about like that. And then we can hit Shift F and Shift J to both fillet and merge all the triangles into quads. So what we have here is we have the metal threaded portion, and then there's the black plastic or black whatever the material is, the black portion, and then we have the final metal connection point right here. So we've got our 3 separate sections. So now we can simply go in and start adding in the details. First, let's go ahead and add in another loop cut. So we're using mainly Control R here, left click, and let's position it right about here. Since you notice on the bulb there's always the flat portion above the threads where there's no longer any threads. And so we want to create that. And so what we can do now is let's just Alt-Shift select this loop here, and we're going to hit E to extrude, and then immediately hit right-click to cancel it. Because what we want to do is now scale it out, but we don't want to scale along the Z-axis, because we don't want to scale this direction at all. So we can simply hit S and Shift-Z to exclude the Z-axis and only scale along the X and the Y to bring that right out. And you can just hold down Control and maybe bring it out. We want to take it the depth of the threads, so that ought to be about right. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and move on down to this area, and we want to just kind of round this out. So let's just add in 2 loop cuts here, and then hit S to scale, and take it out, about like that. And let's deselect everything with A, and then Alt right click on this loop, bring it down, and scale it down a little bit. And then let's go ahead and from here, let's go ahead and add a a Subsurf Modifier so we can start seeing what this is looking like. So add modifier, Subsurf, subdivision levels 2, optimal draw, select everything, hit W, and set smooth. And then you'll notice we get these black lines, and this is because we've got normals facing opposite directions, which you can see if you click the Draw Normals button. You can see some of these are pointing in, some of them are pointing out. So if we hit Control N, recalculate the normals, now they're all facing out, and we can fix that. Okay, so with the Subsurf on, you can see we need to start adding some more loops to add in the sharpness. First off, let's work on the bottom here. Let's just hit Control R, add another loop there to bring that in nice and sharp. Okay, we can maybe take this down a little more, and let's add in another loop on this side as well to sharpen that up more. Alrighty, that looks good. And then we need to add in another loop here and scale it down a little bit, and add another loop in the middle, scale it up, so that we can see that these are clearly two different materials. Okay, let's add another loop right in the center here, so we can just Control R and middle click, and then scale that up a little bit. And what that does is just adds a little bit of roundness to it. Now I'm feeling like the angle on this is a little too sharp, particularly if you look at a real bulb. It does help, particularly when modeling real objects like this, to have an actual light bulb sitting next to you, if that's a possibility. I'm going to just scale this up a little bit, just kind of smooth that out just a little. And let's also scale this whole thing down. So all I'm doing is hitting B to box select, and then S to scale. Now, you'll notice on the bottom here, where we've got these faces, it's looking very distorted. And this is because all of our faces are quickly changing directions. So what we can do is just Alt-Shift-click on both of these. Let's extrude and just scale it in and just make it a lot smaller. And then maybe bring it out just the tiniest bit along the Z-axis. So since it's a lot smaller, now it's a lot less noticeable. And so that pretty much solves that. Okay, we're doing pretty well here. We've almost got this portion done. And then we'll look at the threads. But on the top here, we actually need to reverse this. Right here, this actually needs to scale out because there's actually a slight ridge here versus an indent on most light bulbs, because it's where it's connecting to the glass. Now let's go and add in another loop there to sharpen that up. And we'll add another loop on the inside here. We don't want this one too sharp because that's where threads are actually technically are going to merge with this as one fluid material, but we're going to fake that. Now let's go ahead and we need to model the interior of this. Because basically this is just a metal cap that's then connecting to the glass bulb. Now one thing I do notice, feeling like this is a little too long, so I'm just going to hit my box select, select it, hit G and Z, and then hold down Control to lock it to the grid, and just kind of shorten that up a little bit. That feels a little better. Okay, now we want to basically just take this entire thing in to create thickness. And so let's just select a loop, and we're just basically going to E to extrude, take it in just a little bit, and then E to extrude, take it down to our next loop, scale in, E to extrude, once more. And we just want to keep this at a nice thickness for the whole thing. And so you can see what I'm doing, you know, it doesn't have to be exact, but we just want to be sure to add thickness to this whole piece. And then on the bottom here, we're just going to basically cap it off. So all I'm doing is E to extrude, scaling it, taking it in, hit Shift F, and Shift J, W to set smooth. There we are. Now, you know, that may not be exact, particularly how a light bulb is necessarily built, but it's going to be close enough, particularly for these purposes. For one, you really won't see much of this ever, and so that's alright. Now, let's go ahead and model the threads, and then we can get to the bulb. So I'm going to hit Control W just to save it, be sure everything's good. My computer's lagging for just a second. There we are. Okay, now, the threads are actually going to be a lot easier than you think. And they're actually a lot of fun. And basically what we're going to do is add looking at the threads here, we're basically going to make a profile shape for one thread. And so we can do this. Let's just hit Shift-C to recenter our cursor, hit spacebar, add mesh, plane, hit Tab to go into edit mode, and then let's just select this edge here, hit X, delete edges. So this then gives us the basic profile, which then we'll just scale that down to about the size of a thread, hit G, and move it out to right about here. Because, like I said earlier, we want this thread to go in, or it's going to merge right here, so we want it basically coming out of this. Okay, now we need to adjust the thickness because we don't want it penetrating our model. Although I'm going to bring it out just about there. And I'm going to take this, take it out a little bit more, and scale it down so that once we add the Subsurf modifier, we'll get a nice smooth curve. And now we're going to select everything, and we're going to look at the spin tool, or excuse me, the screw tool. So this is down here in the edit buttons, and let's just see what happens if we just immediately hit screw. If we hit screw, you notice we get this question mark next to our cursor, and this is because we have two windows open, and it doesn't know which one to screw from, because basically the direction that it works is based on your view. So if you screw it from the top view, it's going to be different than if you do it from the front view. And in this case, we want to do it from the front view, so let's just left click in this view, and you can immediately see what's happened. Very, very cool. What it does basically, it's the distance between each of the threads is based on this. So if I scale this up, then it'll take a longer, or a larger, I don't know that you'd say, perhaps distance between them. And then if you'll notice that if we now, let's undo that, if we set our turns to say 4 and hit screw, it's going to take each one of those turns. So you can see how we can very easily create threads. Now, currently that's just perfectly straight. What if we wanted to create perhaps a actual screw, like a nail, and we wanted it to curve in like this? Well, then simply just adjust these two vertices, and what this is basically the angle at which it's circulating is based on the angle of the last two open vertices, or the inside edge. And so if we select these and just rotate them around, and now select everything and hit screw, you can see what it's doing. It's going out at that angle. Now, I'm going to undo that because we actually want this straight. You also notice that it's going up right now, and we want it to go down. So simply click the clockwise button to make it go counterclockwise. And now we need to decide how many threads we want. So let's go back over to our reference, which, by the way, I forgot to point out. One handy thing as Blender is that it has multiple screens. By default, there's a animation, a model, and this is actually a materials one by default, although I changed the name, sequence and scripting that's set up that allow you to use them. And you can switch these by holding on Control, Alt, and using the right or left arrow to switch between them. And so I like to set one up with my reference and my model, because this keeps me having from switch between different programs, you know, whether it's your picture viewer to Firefox to Chrome, whatever it is. It just allows you to stay within Blender. And obviously within this, I could, you know, set it up with multiple image viewers and whatnot. So very, very handy. But looking at this, let's see how many threads we need. Look, we can see about 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll maybe do 5 turns. And so if we select this now and hit screw, you can see we're really not, you know, it's good. And I realize we're going the wrong direction. This actually, I believe, well, I'm not actually sure how you control that. I don't actually remember. It can be a little finicky. So this will just place our curve at the bottom, right about where it starts to curve down, and hit screw. Okay. Now just to check this. Alrighty. Oops. So right now our thread's still a little small, so we're going to scale it up and then bring it in just a little bit and hit screw. Okay, now it's too big. Take it down, maybe do one less turn, and hit screw. And let's go and add our Subsurf Modifier, just so we can see the subsurfed one. Set smooth, 2 levels, optimal draw. And then you can see we need to scale our model out. Control in. Okay, well this is starting to look good, but there's a couple of things we need to do. First off, let's go ahead and select everything except our original screw. Delete vertices. And let's go ahead and extrude this in, one more, and then scale this down. We'll get a little more profile to it so that there's actually space between the screws, as you can see there. Maybe even scale this down a little more. There we are. this out. There we go. That's starting to look good. So now, let's go ahead and select everything. Hit Control N, take it down, about up to about right there, because we want this last thread to merge with this. And so you can see with our current depth, we need to bring this whole area out. So let's just select it, and minus these two inside loops. Just go and deselect those. Could be a little finicky at times. There we are. And then we can just scale these out. There we are, just until it merges perfectly. Now what we need to do is go ahead and bring our screw down one more turn, or to just actually scale it in until it merges right here. And so at this point we can just take this in by hand. Maybe this one a little bit. This one just a little bit along both the Y and the X. And what we're trying to do is just make a nice gradual merge. Because remember, we're just faking this. Okay, we need to take that back in a little bit just so it's under the surface. That looks pretty good. Although you notice that the oh, never mind, everything looks good. Okay, so that's the threaded portion of our screw, and obviously, you know, that we could get that a little more accurate, maybe it's a little sharper or more threads. It's kind of up to you and what you want to do. We'll maybe soften this up a little bit. Just kind of take it up just slightly. Take that down a little, just kind of make that a little more gradual. Okay, so we're going to leave that as is, and now is to move on to the bulb before we get too much time. The bulb's going to be pretty easy. What we're going to do is go into our top view, hit spacebar, add mesh, and UV sphere. And we're going to stay with the same amount of vertices. It's always good to keep that consistent throughout your model. And so we have a UV sphere, which we want to then just scale up to about the size of the bulb, which we can see. You know, we're looking at maybe twice the diameter of the connection, so something about like that. And then we'll take it up to about where it would be. And then we're going to hit Tab to go into edit mode. And looking at this, we've got, you know, it's maybe 1/3 of the way in is where it starts taking down. So let's go ahead and select everything below this. Hit E to X, delete vertices, and then we'll start extruding from here. So now we can just hit E to extrude, scale it in, E to extrude, scale it in, and we're just making the light bulb form. And we'll take that in, and we want to go in and follow the basic curve of our inset here. Take it in. And then on the bottom here. Now, this is one part where it's going to get a little tricky, because since we're going to make this transparent, remember we're modeling the glass here, and so we need to model this interior portion as well, which basically it's just blown in glass. So this is it continues down here in, and it comes back up like so. And so we need to do that. And so we're going to just select this, hit E to extrude, take it down, scale in, and then bring it up in a nice curve like so, bringing in the shape of that filament, or not the filament, but the interior portion of the glass. Now, if you look at a bulb, this portion is actually wider than it is thick, or along the X and the Y, so we need to scale it down along the Y-axis a little bit, and up along the X, like so. We can do the same thing here, just make that nice and gradual. And then we'll select it. Let's go back over to our reference, and you can see we've got it's coming up, and then it goes in and out. And so we're going to take that in a little more, and it'll take it out like so. Add in another loop right here, select these, take them out along the x-axis a little bit, and then scale up along everything. And just continue looking at your reference the whole time. Oops. Okay, and then it comes back to a perfect circle pretty much, so we just need to go in, and now we can extrude this, scale it down, and scale along the x-axis until, since this glass doesn't need to be absolutely exact, so we just want it fairly close to a circle. That's good. Go back and look at it again. Take this straight up, and then add in this. And we're almost good to go. Hit Shift F to fill that, and Shift J so we can see it there. Oh, okay, and notice that this didn't fill perfectly, and so we need to go in, let's go into face mode, and take these two edges right here, and hit Control E, rotate edge, Control E, rotate edge, and then we'll do that one more time, so then we can fill these two triangles and make that all even quads. Going back to vertice mode, I'm going to add in another loop right here. Let's select everything, add in a Subsurf Modifier, so we can start to see it. And now the inner portion is way too tall at the moment, and so let's just select it and take it down. Make sure I don't have anything else selected. And we can see that it's going to come to, this portion is right below the curve of the bulb, so that's about good. And right now I think the bulb is a little too tall, so we're going to take this down and maybe scale, yeah, about like that. Okay, that's looking pretty good. We're going to maybe still take the center down a little bit. Bring that down just a little more. Okay, now while working on the center here, we can go ahead and make this easier by hiding the rest of the bulb. So just select it, hit H. There we are. Let's go back over and look at our bulb again. Now one thing on these, it tends to, this interior portion is kind of almost circular and then almost has wings on this. So we can make that real easy. Let's just go to face mode, select these loops here, deselect. Right, let's look at this from the front view, make sure we got the right thing selected. Okay, so we only need this loop here and here. And then we want to deselect any of the ring up top and the outside portion. And then we can just hit S, scale that along the x-axis. And we'll maybe undo that, get rid of this middle portion as well. There we are. We can, that looks good. Okay, that's going to be close enough. So now let's go in and model these, the filaments coming up, which all we're going to do on these is we're going to add this as a new object, spacebar, cube. And go into edit mode, scale it way down. And on these ones, we'll go ahead and just use a mirror modifier. So we're going to take it over to the left or to the right, add mirror modifier, do clipping. Actually, we don't need to do clipping on this, and show it during edit mode. Scale this way down, scale it up along the z-axis, take it down, and just take it, somewhere below the glass so we can see it's connecting to that, coming out. You can get rid of that bottom face just so that our Subsurf modifier that we're going to add now doesn't round that off. Okay, and we want to just bring it right up. It comes through here and through there. So just extrude it, bring it up, and bring it out through there. And then it comes up to about the center of the bulb, at which point it has a small nodule on it. So just take that up like that, maybe add in another loop there, add in another loop there, hide the bulb so we can see it. Okay, now the wire portion is maybe a little too thick, so we'll just scale them down. It doesn't need to be exact. Particularly on things like light bulbs, in most scenes they're very small and you're not going to see much of it. Apologies for the Skype there. Okay, so now let's take this, and you'll notice on the bulb we've got this small portion that comes out like this, and so we're going to duplicate this as a second wire. Oh, and I had a small portion selected on the bottom. So we'll duplicate this, fill it, rotate it, and then looking at this, we're basically going to extrude it up and over, so we get kind of two arcs going, like so. And then on the center, we'll just bring it down. So we do want the dew clipping after all. Bring it down like so. We add in another loop there. Delete that face just so that everything's connected well. Okay. And now let's go ahead and do these small little filaments that come up through here. And I do believe those go all the way down. And so we need to unhide this. And we're going to select this. Select a single edge. And we've got the kind of loop through it. So we're going to Shift D to duplicate, scale down, rotate along the Z-axis until it's basically flat. And then we're just going to take this in basically in a small circle. So again, we're just extruding. Now chances are there's going to be somebody that'll see this that's a light bulb engineer or something like that and gripe at me for not building this completely right. But frankly, for most uses within CG, this will be more than adequate. Like I said, remember this is a little detail in most scenes, and so as long as you're close, then it doesn't generally cause a problem. Okay. We need to go in and modify this so that it fits the subsurfed mesh down to about there. So then we can add a little more of a loop here, fill that face to smooth it up, finish it off, select everything, set smooth. Look at it, and now one thing that I do realize that we forgot is on this, or excuse me, just bringing this out a little bit more. On this portion here, there is a, if you look closely, you can see this bubble here, and that's actually a hole through the center that I believe the purpose is to separate these wires. And so let's just add that real quick. Let's do it by selecting these faces here, and we'll just hit E to extrude, scale down, move my other view down, hit X, delete faces, and then we can just select 4 at a time, hit F, 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 and then one last time, and that just fills those faces and makes a hole in the mesh. And then we can smooth it out a little by selecting these edge ones and hit S and Z to scale along the Z axis to make it a little more circular. There we are. Okay, so that's pretty much it, but there's a couple things we need to do. For one, let's add a little bit of a bulge where the glass is meeting with the metal, and so we can take this and let's just scale it out a little bit. Scale this out a little bit. And then we need to go in and tweak our metal here to make it fit the bulb better. So let me take that up. And let's scale the bulb out further. There we go. I'm going to turn off my grid floor here just so we can see this better. Okay. And maybe our entire bulb is a little too small, so we'll just select it, scale it up, goes around, and now just to make this look a little better, let's go ahead and add a default material to it. Then we're not going to cover much just because we're going to look at that in the next tutorial. We're going to look at the shading and the rendering and whatnot to add in nice materials. And let's just take a look at this in our render. Save this. And we'll maybe adjust our camera angle just a little bit and hit render using the default light setup. And there we have it. There's a basic light bulb within Blender that, oops, sorry, I just noticed that we have a small artifact here where the bulb is not quite, where the glass is a little small still. So we'll just scale that up. There we are, and now we can render that. And there we go. There's a basic light bulb within Blender that will suffice for most any animation. In fact, even be much more than you would need for most animations. And so next tutorial, we're going to look at how to go in and add glass materials to metal, to nice rendering and reflections and whatnot. And so hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you next time.